It is time now for our most popular part of the evening. It's our classic movie discussion. My gosh, and this is our 18th and third part of the evening. I'm Jonathan Betzler, one of your hosts for this evening. As you probably already know from the title, we are here to talk about, wrong way, Apocalypse Now from 1979 is our movie for discussion. All right, so let me introduce my fellow panelists here. First, let's go to my friend in Charlotte, North Carolina, Davie Jo. How you feeling?
Feeling good. Feeling good. I'm excited about another classic movie.
And we're halfway through the evening.
I know. It's a shame. I'm gonna be upset when it's over.
I can tell. And this is my other co-panelist, who apparently is hungry. Jay Money, how you feeling so far? Two shows down.
I feel good, and again, let me say, Happy Halloween, JB.
I'm not familiar with that holiday. I don't think. I don't know what that is.
I know that your Christian fundamental values do not allow you to celebrate Halloween, but I just
is that what it is? I didn't realize I was a Christian fundamentalist, but regardless.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. Yeah.
That's definitely what it is. Okay. Anyway, we're here to talk about Apocalypse Now. It's a film that we had a group outing to at the cemetery, at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery earlier in I think it was, gosh, I'm gonna say early August, late July. I don't remember, but regardless, a group of us went. I don't have photos. Maybe we'll put them on our Facebook page or Twitter or whatever. So a group of us went, and so that's why we're talking about it here tonight. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, Apocalypse Now is based on Joseph Conrad's novella Heart of Darkness. It follows Willard on his mission to track down and assassinate Kurtz, a former U.S. military who's gone a little bit off his rocker and has started a cult of followers, as you can see here in this photo, in the middle of Southeast Asia. Most of the film is about the journey up the river to find Kurtz, taking us through the insanity of war, specifically Vietnam. So why don't we start with Jay Money and during the Indie Spotlight. So Davie Jo, had you seen this film before?
Oh yeah, I have. I'd seen it before.
And what do you think rewatching it?
It gets better each time.
Wow. Okay. And Jay Money.
I've also seen it numerous times. It's hands down great.
Hands down great. But you didn't change anything behind you.
Yeah, I keep forgetting to do that. Sorry. So part of the pastiche of Halloween. But
right. You're focused on that, which I understand.
But in general, I love this movie. So.
I find this movie impressive, but I don't love it by any stretch of the imagination. I am okay with it. It's very impressive in a lot of different ways, most of them technical. There's a lot of things I like about it, and I like what it's trying to do. But I mean, ultimately, one of the litmus tests that I talk about all the time is emotional engagement, and that's where this film fails to me. And in terms of the screening group that went to see this movie with us, there's very mixed feelings, sort of on both sides of that fence. That felt, the polar opposite. That were with you guys in some ways. I think almost everybody agreed with what I just said, but some of them liked it for that reason, and some of it didn't.
I absolutely disagree with what you just said. You don't find it emotionally appealing?
Not even remotely. I don't find the characters interesting, and I think that's a choice. I actually think because it delves into surrealism, and it's in its own way. I mean, maybe based on the Jones's discussion, we have different definitions of the word satire, but I do think that there's a lot of satirical elements here.
Okay, we have a completely different understanding of this movie. This should be good.
Okay, well then, what is your understanding of this movie?
Well, I guess I would say the reason I like it so much is because I think I respond to it on almost a purely emotional level. I mean, the first time I saw this movie, I felt like it was almost a transcendental experience for myself, and this was when I was a little bit younger, of course. But I just really enjoyed watching these characters break down through horrific scenarios. I guess I'm kind of surprised to hear that you didn't feel like there was a connection there because of that.
I don't mean I don't feel like they're characters. I mean I feel like that they are, and this is I think this is a choice, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I think it's the kind of movie it wants to be. I think it wants to be a little bit more surrealistic and more about metaphor and allegory. I mean I think that this. I don't think that they're three-dimensional people. I think that they're all sort of like cogs in this wheel of making making grander points. And I think the realistic nature is meant to sort of show the absurdity of war in general.
You have one character up right now on screen that would definitely exemplify that. I'm not going to disagree with that. But for instance, you feel like Willard's character is completely flat and unrealistic?
I mean, I don't think unrealistic is the word I used, but two-dimensional, yeah. I mean, I don't think he's intended to have like 3 dimensions. He is this, like he is, the audience in some ways. He is, like our guide through this journey. But I don't think that he is like a 3-dimensional character. Like I don't think it's traditional narrative in that sense. And maybe that's the transcendental thing that you're talking about, and maybe you experience it that way because it's not like other films. And I don't think I don't think it's a narrative film in the traditional sense. And not a negative, but I mean, I think those choices.
I'm honestly shocked, is what I would say.
You're honestly shocked, okay? I think it's very effective though in making its point. I just, and I mean, and my group sort of, my group sort of all sort of got behind it, but they were on opposite sides of the fence. That they liked that part of it and they responded to it. Others, it left them cold. It alienated them. The lack of traditional narrative. But I mean, so what exactly are you shocked by?
I am shocked that we had such completely different and dramatic kind of reactions to it. I'm shocked that you're describing it the way that you're describing it, because it's just not how I would describe that movie to begin with. I mean, I'm not gonna, we each have our own opinions about it. Obviously, it's about how you react to it subjectively. I'm just surprised that we are so like at opposite ends on this one.
So, what specifically are you disagreeing with?
Well, the way that you're describing a lot of the characterization, the way that you're describing it as kind of.
So you think that these are 3-dimensional characters and not sort of like.
Well, I'm not going to say that everybody in this film is a 3-dimensional character, but for instance, I don't.
Well, I mean,
Willard is a 3-dimensional character, certainly.
Okay, I mean, how so?
Because I feel like we're seeing him go through a process where he is in a change. He's in an arc. We see him sort of deliberately go down further into the rabbit hole. And he's not just showing us, he's responding to it in a way that I feel like is very emotional. I guess I feel like I empathize a lot with him on a lot of things, and I feel like I mean,
I think for the most part, he intentionally lacks emotion, which is why I think he was chosen.
Oh, I don't think he lacked emotion. I don't think he lacked emotion at all.
I think he's sort of numb to it almost.
Okay.
You're frustrated.
No, I'm not frustrated. I don't know how to argue with this, because it's like my read on his character is it seems like diametrically the opposite of how you read it as well. So
I mean, I don't think what I'm saying is in any shape or form a negative. I mean, I think these are choices that were made. Like I don't think there was an intention to make a traditionally narrative movie.
It doesn't seem like you are describing it as a negative. Again, it's just like, wow, we had very different reactions to the character. It's kind of interesting. That's all.
All right, Davie Jo, you need to break some ties here.
Well, I think he's a pretty complex character. I mean, there are aspects of and I think it's kind of speaks to the performance of Martin Sheen in the movie. He conveys a lot of really strong emotions in a very understated way, and I thought it was really, really amazing. The scene that I'm thinking of is when they board the fishing boat, and the absolute chaos ensues, and obviously he's against doing it to begin with, and then the look on his face of just sheer terror and horror, and then to snap back and come back and be this cold, calculated. He kind of has this like, I have to keep my head about me and be in charge, and then just be cold and unfeeling in the action that he has to take right there after. I think that the arc is one from insanity to getting it back together, back into insanity, then back again. It's not so much.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that math there. I don't know if I followed that diagram.
Well, if you see him in the beginning of the movie in the bedroom,
I don't think he's insane yet. I think he's like
he's talking about the walls closing in on him. He's talking about the walls closing in on him, and
I mean, I don't think that's necessarily insanity. Like, at least not to the depths that he reaches towards the end. And I'm not denying he has an arc, but what I'm suggesting is that he's meant to represent something instead of actually like being like a three-dimensional character. You know what I mean? Like we talk about the character of the characters in Bridge of Spies, you know, were meant to be layers, and I don't think, and that's generally what you go for when you're making a traditional narrative thing. And I'm not just saying the character changes. I'm not saying he doesn't, but I mean, I feel like he's meant to represent something, like represent, you know, like the sane person in the insane world. You mentioned Rabbit Hole, so he's Alice. You know, he's meant to represent these things, but I don't think he's meant to. I mean, I think he's meant to be a guide in many ways, a guide into this surrealistic world. Like, but I don't think that he is, you know, like the kind of character that we've talked about or in these other films that are more traditionally narrative.
Do you root for his character?
No, I don't care. I mean, like, I don't have any emotional engagement at all.
So that's part of the issue then. For some,
it's a completely cerebral experience for me.
That's interesting. So you don't feel like you. Well, okay, interesting. I'm just gonna say.
I have no connection to him whatsoever. I mean, like, maybe it's more like some people that watched the film with us had a very visceral, difficult reaction to like the film and particularly the violence. Like, and I don't know what it was about this film. Like, this is a person that likes horror films, like you guys. Like, one in particular that I'm thinking of that like was really like could not, you know, had a very like strong negative reaction to the film because of the nature of the violence. And I don't know what it was about this particular film. Someone that's seen other war films and things like that, but I don't know what it was about this film. Maybe it was, you know, like you think about the Napalm Ride of the Valkyries scene, like maybe it was too flippant, you know, and that made it harsher in a way for that person. I had a point in bringing that up, but I guess. So I don't remember what my point was. It was going to be good though.
It's a point in and of itself, and it's I can respect that because it's hard. I mean, it's hard to watch, and it's definitely you know, I don't know how realistic it was and how things were. I certainly wasn't there, but I mean, it just the way it's portrayed. I mean, it's just you see horrible things happen to people that are just kind of trying to get by in life, you know, and it's tough. I mean, I can see how someone could just not enjoy that at all.
Okay.
Wait, so Davie Jo, what you're saying is you can see why people don't like the Vietnam War.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that it's they could if you're not into the arc of the character and able to just kind of, I mean, you know, you gotta. The film is beautiful in a lot of ways, but it's really, really grotesque in a lot of ways, and I think that, you know, I think that if you're not able to kind of distance yourself from it, it's not gonna be an enjoyable experience. I love the movie, but I can see how someone could watch it once and be like, that was great, and I never want to see it again.
Sure.
And you touched on something there. I mean, like, well, first of all, let me say, like, it was a very interesting discussion that we had after the film with the group. So I mean, like, I feel like I have this sort of like I'm backed up by the, you know, like not just my opinion, but you know, these others that have been like texting me. Like, I actually asked them like to give me like text comments as well that I've already sort of like, you know, summarized. But the point being that, I mean, like, it was like split down the middle of these people that like the surrealistic nature alienated people for sure, and I can understand that, and I don't know if that sort of touches on what Davey was saying. But there are other people that everyone agreed that it was sort of surrealistic in nature and not a traditional narrative. And the the further down the river, the more surrealistic it gets. Also on purpose, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Furthermore, but there's this other handful of people love that aspect of it and love that concept to make the point about the absurdity of war. That people really got behind that, and I can see that as well. I think it's a very interesting concept, and I think it was executed very well. I think it's an impressive film, but I have more of a cerebral interest in it, and it doesn't get me there. So I mean, I think that's the disconnect. One of the other things that somebody said that I wanted to bring up is somebody said that it was the most beautiful film they've ever seen, and I thought that was really interesting. And I think that needs to be discussed. I mean, I certainly think the cinematography is outstanding. Gentlemen,
Go ahead.
It kind of Vertigo is the movie that it kind of reminded me of, in the sense that I feel like you could take any still from the movie and it's just art.
Is there a connection there in terms of the use of color?
That's. I mean, we're getting a little out of my element, but it felt that way. I don't know that I could articulate it, but it definitely felt that way.
Jay Money, what do you think?
I'm singing the praises of this movie a lot, so obviously I feel pretty positively about the cinematography on it. I think I see where you're going with the color. There certainly seems to be sections of the movie that are devoted to color in some way. I mean, obviously there's a lot of tonal shift in the greens that happens as you get further deeper into the jungle.
Yeah, and I think there's a shift as the movie goes along. So yeah. I mean, it's nice that somebody's putting a lot of this thought into this movie.
Yeah. Did you JB? Did you think it was almost kind of show-offy when they did a lot with flares and they looked so great every time they did it, but smoke like they purple smoke.
No, I didn't mind, because I mean, honestly, they're at a point where anything goes. I think that's the setup.
Yeah.
I when you go deeper down this surrealistic path, and you're not dealing with it's episodic, surrealistic. I mean, and you're not dealing with traditional narrative anymore. So I think anything. I think they were at a point where it didn't. There's a lot of things that they could have done, and quite frankly, there's a lot of things that they did do.
Yeah.
That were interesting in their own way. So I don't. That didn't bother me at all. The other thing that came up that I thought was really interesting, and we don't really talk about that much, is one of the people that at the screening said that they found the sound design to be immersive, was the word that they used. And that's not something that comes up a lot. It's something I think about sometimes, especially when approaching a project, but it doesn't come up a lot of times in our discussions. Did you guys notice the sound at all? The sound design?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are certain sequences that are really built around sound design, but also musical choices. I mean, we've talked a lot about the infamous helicopter scene towards the beach, but I think in general, I noticed things like a lot of the ambient noise that happens while he's in the jungle. There's obviously the thing that happens at the very beginning of the movie with him and the fan blades and the helicopter blades. I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of cross over to help create another, I guess, surreal textural element to the movie, which I think is really important as well. So, yeah, I can totally see why somebody might find it immersive. I guess what I would say is it really kind of depends on where you're also hearing it, because, you have to have the right stereo system, the right setup to actually kind of get all this stuff together.
I guess so. I mean, is it some of the things we talk about sound design when we're approaching it is we talk about is it an invisible art form to some degree. Mm-hmm. Is it a bad thing to notice the sound design in such a way? Is that appropriate?
I think it's a. Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. I mean, we're talking about this as people that like movies and also like being involved in pro-filmic situations, basically. So I think that we would all. I mean, I personally feel like yes, it's okay to notice that kind of thing. It's also okay to appreciate it while you're there. But I also think that it's important to not be overtaken by it. I never found it to be.
Except in this film, I think because of the surrealistic nature again, I made the joke that anything goes, but I mean, I almost think that that's true. I mean, I think that because we weren't dealing with recreating reality, you know what I mean? that's where sound gets distracting, is when we're trying to recreate reality or make something, fit into like our sense of verisimilitude, and then it doesn't, and that feels awkward. But in this film, it's not about verisimilitude, so it's okay almost.
Yeah.
So the other thing that came up a little bit is the ending, which is controversial in its own right, in the sense that you got the sense that, from the documentary about the film, I don't know if you guys have seen that, that this film, the ending, the last 10 minutes are not exactly, and for what it's worth, I don't know what I should have made sure, actually. I don't know if you guys watched the Redux or the original.
I watched the original.
Jim, are you sure you watched the original?
I probably watched the original. I don't remember there being a Redux thing on it. Yeah,
okay.
Just the original.
The ending frustrated many people at the screening, and quite frankly, I think it was, Coppola, if you're here right now, he would tell you, like, in the original, it was cobbled together because he had an uncooperative actor and all these other stories that you know about the shooting of the ending of this movie, which I think was meant to be longer than just the 5 to 10 minutes that it was.
Yeah.
So, people that didn't know the background, and quite frankly, I'm not sure the background story matters that much. But this it left a bad taste in the mouth for some other people that might have been on the fence otherwise. Like they were engaged and then they were like felt very frustrated by the ending. Where do you guys? Are you guys both fans of the film? So how do you respond to that?
Well, it's certainly abrupt, and I think I could see how maybe you could feel a bit cheated, but it's a movie that isn't trying to make a ton of. There's no it's not by the book, and so you can't.
Which we talked about.
Yeah, you can't have any expectations. So you can like it or not like it, but I think that what a lot of people are responding to is how it just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel normal.
I agree with you, but I do feel like people, like, they always are bringing a set of expectations with them to movies. Like, like you're telling them they can't, but it's hard not to. I mean, those of us that watch movies a lot, are able to divorce ourselves a little differently because it's what we do. But at the same time, and quite frankly, maybe Coppola is not making this film for those people.
Well, yeah, and I think you make a great point. If you watch a lot of movies, that kind of stuff doesn't bother you as much because you're gonna watch one tomorrow.
One for tonight, just pointing out.
But you know what I mean, and I think that to the people, the more casual viewer, it can be frustrating.
J Money, what you haven't said anything about the ending?
Well, I guess I want to backtrack for a second. Was there something specific about the ending, or just the fact that it felt rushed?
It is. That's part of it. To be honest, the discussion was in. I think it was August 1st, quite frankly. So I don't remember specific. That was part of it. But overall, I think it's fairly clear that the ending is a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I guess I felt like that matched the tone of what they were supposed to be doing at that point.
In the sense that the film gets crazier and crazier, and this section just happens to be the craziest. Is that what you mean?
Well, in the sense that it feels like everything is very, very loose by that point, and everything's kind of falling apart. And it felt like there are sequences at the end here where there's just characters that are buried in darkness, right? You see them sort of really underlit, sort of going through the motions, and it feels like everybody's become.
But it doesn't matter that much. But they're underlit because he was fatter than Coppola wanted him, so he didn't want to show his body.
But he made it work.
Regardless, for me, it's like everybody becomes really disconnected and disjointed at that point. So it kind of, in some ways, it kind of made sense for me that it devolved into the kind of mess that it did. Whether or not that's kind of an excuse for what you guys are talking about, I don't know. I don't really feel bothered by the ending. I will agree that it does feel rushed, certainly. I'm also kind of aware of the problems that they were having with Brando, so I guess maybe I've always known about that part of the mythology behind it, and maybe that's why I've given it kind of a pass. I don't recall ever feeling like dissatisfied. But it sounds like what you're saying is a lot of people felt dissatisfied from it.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I think Aaron, Davey can understand that. I mean, like it's leading somewhere, and it is. I mean, like Kurtz's speeches are very esoteric.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, they
What?
they
Right.
are. That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, I would agree they are very esoteric, but it also feels like it's Brando being a crazy guy. It's Brando. Like it felt like Brando in a lot of ways. It wasn't
Yeah.
Kirk, it was Brando that was at the end.
Well, and that's that's a question too. But at the same time, it does feel. I can see it. I mean, like it didn't bother me. I mean, I think I'm sort of J Money being aware of some of the issues, but at the same time, it shouldn't matter. Those external issues shouldn't matter. I think Coppola can justify it in certain ways, but at the same time, like all of the strength of the movie, like I feel like he's effectively in all for all its realism up to that point, he's effectively making, like getting his point across. In spite of how crazy things are, like it's effective. That ending, I can't necessarily wrap my head around it. You know what I mean? And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I certainly don't think I'm an idiot. But at the same time, I don't have a real good explanation for it, and that's the only part of the movie that I can say that about.
All right, that's fair. For me, I think every time I see it, I always think like, wow, they got to a point where they were just like, they ran out of energy to some degree. They had been through the ringer, and you can just feel like it's palpable how much it feels like the cast and crew probably are just like so fucking tired of that movie at that point. Like
have you seen the documentary? You're speaking like you have.
What?
You're speaking like you have seen Hearts of Darkness, the documentary.
Oh, I haven't. I haven't seen it. To me, it felt like they reached a point where everybody was probably on their last leg. They reached a point where probably everybody was coming a little unraveled. Because
it's funny because I don't think they shot that part at the end of the shooting schedule. But
maybe, is it because is it in an actual really remote location? There's something about it that seems really desperate to me that I really like about it.
Well, the whole movie was a bit of a mess in terms of the production.
Goes surprise, surprise.
But Brando is the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble with your feed, just so you know, J Money. I don't know if you're having some internet issues there. But I think it's time to move on, guys. We're a little ahead of schedule, so let's keep it going. It's Classic Movie Showdown, and it's a special night because we do these brackets and everything that we've for each of these classic movies that have been really interesting and exciting, and I really like it. See, we're ahead of schedule. That was the timer to move on to the Classic Showdown. So anyway, that's what we got going on right now. And tonight's special because we've got not one, not two, but 3 different brackets for Apocalypse Now tonight. So it's a very exciting three-peat that we're going to do tonight. So
crazy.
What's that?
It's crazy.
Yeah. How excited are you, Davie Jo?
Pumped.
So, Davie Jo, I know you love doing this, so why don't you read off the rules for the Classic Movie Showdown?
Okay. Seating criteria varies from bracket to bracket. Films that JB hosts as screenings need to be at least 15 years old or older. Voters are eligible if they see both films within a 12-month period, and they both must view the film in JB's presence. JB is ineligible to vote unless the vote counts. He will break any ties.
All right. I wish you maybe added a little flavor to that, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to get too upset about it.
That was as spicy as I get, man.
All right, guys. So we got 3 brackets. I'm going to start with the AFI bracket, which is, you guys know AFI's list of top 100 films. Both of these films appear in the list, and they're close to one another, as you can see here. So here's the AFI bracket, and we have 8 Apocalypse Now as an 8 seed, and the seeding goes the same as the NCAA tournament for those of you that are familiar with basketball. So these are the closest that you can get in the first round, an 8 and a 9 seed. And 9 seed is a film we've talked about a lot on this show ever since the beginning. It comes up a lot. Annie Hall. So it's a tough call. Now, because we talked about it a lot, you guys, I'm sure, are aware that Annie Hall is one of my all-time favorite movies. And I know you guys have both seen it. What do you? I know you guys you like both films. But where are you in this Annie Hall Apocalypse Now debate?
This is hard.
Well, it's an 8-9 matchup. It's supposed to be hard.
I mean, I'll tell you that I'll watch Annie Hall more times than I'll watch Apocalypse Now, but I don't necessarily know that makes it a better film.
Well, I mean, I am with you in the sense like rewatchability does not necessarily automatically connote quality to me, but sometimes, but I mean, like that does for a lot of people.
Sure.
J Money, I have a feeling you already know your answer.
Yep, Apocalypse Now.
Okay, and you want to say why?
I like it more.
Can you be more specific?
As much as I agree with you guys about not necessarily counting watchability, or at least the amount of watchability as a factor in these situations, I would probably choose Apocalypse Now over Annie Hall if I had to pick between the two of them, and I would have no problem rewatching it more often, I think, than Annie Hall. And I like Annie Hall. Let's just be clear about this. I like the movie quite a bit, but between the two of them, as an experience, I like Apocalypse Now.
Okay, and so Davey, have you made up your mind?
I'm gonna say that Annie Hall's had more of an impact on me as in my life, just kind of the way I look at things, the way I speak. So I'll go with Annie Hall, but it's a tough decision. And
it's like these 8-9 ones are supposed to be close. I mean, and that's what's fun. Like these are the best brackets to me, the ones that are close, because they encourage the most discussion. And when we had, because I mean, what we maybe Davey didn't mention in the rules is these are brackets that are predetermined at these screenings that I have. So these winners are predetermined in most cases. So J Money and Davie Jo's votes don't necessarily count. At this time, but it was a close vote. I mean, the winner won by about 2 votes, and it is the fact that Apocalypse Now is a hard pill to swallow. I think Annie Hall was the winner here, and no one, because it's so close, no one really begrudged it. I don't know, sometimes we have these winners and J Money, you're angry. When you hear that Pinocchio beat the great dictator, etc.
Yeah, that did piss me off. That's true, but I'm not angry about this one certainly.
So yeah, I mean, everyone was sort of everyone that voted for Annie Hall, there was no are you kidding me? Which sometimes we get. So I mean, this one could have gone either way. And for me, Annie Hall is my 7th favorite movie of all time. So, I'm a little biased in that regard. So I would have also voted for Annie Hall. So even if it was just the 3 of us voting, it would be the same result. So yeah. So that's that one. How do you guys feel so far?
Feel good.
Cheated.
You feel cheated? Well, hopefully, maybe you'll feel better going forward. Next up is the, I colloquially call it the Best Picture loser bracket. I didn't realize that J Money was going to create a graphic that emphasized losers so much, because these are great films.
I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was a hilarious title.
It's funny. I'm not saying it's not funny. I feel bad now, because I mean, what I should technically call the bracket is Best Picture nominees.
Yeah,
but I feel like that.
Right.
I want to be clear that it doesn't include Best Picture winners.
Right.
So that's why I called it the Best Picture loser bracket. But these are all good films. The idea is these are the best films that were nominated for Best Picture that didn't win, and quite frankly, very frequently, these films are better than the actual Best Picture winners. I think you guys can at least agree with that.
Yeah. Who won in '79? Do you know off the top of your head?
Kramer versus Kramer. Do I know off the top of my head? What the F? Who do you think you're talking to? And I can tell you, in 1944, which is, you can see Double Indemnity is the other film in this bracket. It was a film called Going My Way, which is one of the worst Best Picture winners. It's a Bing Crosby thing, and it's a struggle. Like, I screened it here about a year and a half ago, and it was a struggle to watch, like, even for me. So the fact that Double Indemnity lost that year is a little crazy. But Kramer versus Kramer. Do you guys like Kramer versus Kramer at least?
I do. I think that it doesn't hold up as well just because, it became something that was pretty crazy when it came out. I think it was kind of a groundbreaking thing, and now it's just kind of,
I mean, it's like Apocalypse Now certainly was quite an achievement in 1979. But one film that was also nominated for Best Picture that I really like a lot, and I think I might have voted for that year, is All That Jazz. I don't know if you guys have seen that film.
Yeah.
I think it came up in our dance movies conversation not too long ago. All right, so we're talking about Double Indemnity now. It is another 8-9 bracket, which is insane. And you have never seen Double Indemnity. Is that right, Davie?
No, I haven't. I regret that I haven't.
You failed us in this regard.
I did.
And J Money, have you seen it?
I have.
How recently?
2 days ago.
You rewatched it. Oh, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah.
You're like a team player as opposed to some people.
There was a scheduling snafu that you may or may not be aware of.
Well, I mean, what we decided before you joined us is that we don't know where you got Thursday the 22nd from. That was never even an option. So the scheduling snafu is on you. So how do you feel about before you vote, J Money, how do you feel about Double Indemnity?
Well, I really like Double Indemnity. I think it's, I don't know if I like it for the right reasons. I mean, everybody talks about how it is sort of such an iconic film noir movie, and that's definitely true. But it's also, if you watch it at this point, after having seen so many other examples of film noir, and having seen it sort of like repeatedly brought up and referenced, and also having seen like the same lines used over and over again, it's kind of a funny movie. Like, it's hard to divorce yourself from how iconic it is and how it's almost like a caricature of what you expect a film noir to be. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I don't know if I love the comments, but I know what you mean. Like, I feel like it's shortchanging its accomplishment. I mean, I actually think it's just a riveting screenplay.
I think it's fascinating in the sense that I think it's fascinating that they took an incredibly I think everybody would consider a boring profession and turned it into a hard-boiled, like, whodunit criminal detective story. I think it's a fascinating movie. I think it's a fascinating movie because, who do you root for in this movie? Who do you like in this movie? It's hard to say.
I love that about it, for sure. I love
that about it, too, definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want to shortchange this movie. I'm just saying it's interesting because it's such an iconic feature that at this point that it's hard to divorce yourself from that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I hear that sometimes at these screenings. I never have that particular issue.
No.
But I mean, I also grew up with a lot of older films, so I've sort of like managed to sort of like make them chronological in my mind. You know what I mean? Like, I am able to sort of divorce myself, like appreciate the predecessor more for being trailblazing. Like, I don't know why I've been able to do that.
Again, I appreciate it, but it's also like I enjoy it because I enjoy it on that level as well. Like, I enjoy it on the fact that I enjoy that it was the first one to really do a lot of the tricks.
It's also really sexy for 1944, I think.
What's that?
I think it's pretty sexy for 1944.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's pretty scandalous in a lot of ways. It's a pretty daring movie.
Yeah, and I mean, we've talked about Billy Wilder a little bit, haven't we? Have we done any Billy Wilder movies here?
Fortune Cookie, we talked about Billy Wilder.
Fortune Cookie, yeah, of course, Fortune Cookie, yeah. So, which, by the way, is episode 11.3. If you guys want to watch our full discussion on the Fortune Cookie at some other time.
Well done.
So it was a great discussion, quite frankly.
It really was.
So Billy Wilder rears his head again, and this is particularly. This is not like the Fortune Cookie. Billy Wilder is generally known for comedy. This is not what that is. And it's still pretty successful. And like, for all its darkness, there are some great funny dialogue. There's some sharp lines.
There's some really funny lines in it, definitely. I mean, there's a sense of humor to the whole thing that I think Billy Wilder you can't get away from that with Billy Wilder in general. And there's some just, I mean, like, you know, you want to be these people. Like, as much as they are terrible people, they are so smooth and they're so suave to some degree, and they're also just on top of everything. It's hard not to be envious of them, of some of their qualities. I mean, they are.
So why don't you use this opportunity to place your vote?
What's that?
Why don't you place your vote between Apocalypse Now and Double Indemnity 8-9?
Okay, well, it probably won't come as a surprise to you that I'm still going to come down on the side of Apocalypse Now, and I think that you know, just from this conversation that we're having here, what I'm getting from it is that maybe I really enjoy a lot of the surreal of that movie, and that's possibly what's pushing me towards it as a choice on these matchups, because that's something that I really enjoy about cinema in general.
Is the potential for surrealism?
It's the potential for that kind of quality, yeah. And like I said,
do you automatically prefer a surrealist film to a narrative just by nature, like something like Synecdoche, New York, like Kaufman's film? Like, do you will gravitate for that just for the attempt at surrealism?
Yeah, in some ways I think so. I think that probably is true. I think in some ways that's the stuff that I personally find the meatiest to latch onto. So that's, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I also enjoy watching the most.
What if the meaning is pretentious or empty? Like for me, like in the case of Synecdoche, New York.
Well, you know, for me, actually, I found Synecdoche, New York to be a very personal film. It was something that I really identified with on a lot of levels. So I guess you know, I think it depends on what you want to bring to your viewing experience.
But you're choosing Apocalypse Now. Is that correct?
But yes, I'm choosing Apocalypse Now. Yes.
In fairness, Double Indemnity actually didn't land with the audience when I screened it last August. Like, I think they had very high expectations, and they were like, they thought it was cool, but it wasn't as cool as they thought it would be. So Apocalypse Now did emerge victorious there. So they're in keeping with, and this is not a group that identifies with surrealism as much as J Money does. But I mean, like, this was more a vote against against Double Indemnity. And again, I don't think anyone felt like Double Indemnity was bad. I think they just felt like it didn't necessarily meet their expectations.
Sure.
And like, it wasn't as. I mean, I do feel like for the first time I saw Double Indemnity, I feel like it grabbed me in a very visceral way. Like, I was just like riveted. And they didn't feel that. They thought it was like an interesting mystery, but almost like what Davie Jo said about the Joneses. They almost felt like it was something they might see on television at any given day at this point, any given like procedural series or something. Huh. So it didn't land with the audience that I screened it for. So Apocalypse Now goes on to win there.
You know, JV, I just real quick, I want to say this conversation reminded me of a thought that I had watching Apocalypse Now, in that. When he was narrating the boat trip, I kind of thought that it had a kind of a noir feel to it, just the way he was, I was definitely...
Because they use narration? Is voiceover now only allowed in film noirs?
I don't know, it just had that feel to it. When he said something like, I was in charge, but it was definitely his boat, or something like, it just kind of, it had that feel to me, and I was like, that...
Well, I mean... I feel like voiceover for me only really works in film noirs. I think we've talked about this before, but if we haven't, generally I feel like voiceover is a crutch. Like, it is, is a narrative band-aid. If used improperly. Goodfellas is an example of voiceover used awesomely. Sometimes as a counterpoint to narrative, to the story. It's adding information instead of showing us, giving us information that we can already see or learn for ourselves. It's not. Most voiceover doesn't trust the audience, and I'm not saying Apocalypse Now had moments of that and had moments where it didn't. Like, but generally I react negatively to voiceover, except in film noirs. Film noirs are a different thing. It's almost like like film noirs without the voiceover sometimes feels like it's because generally the voiceover is diegetic in the sense. Most film noirs, like in Double Indemnity, which you haven't seen, but it's someone telling someone else the story, and that's where the voiceover comes from. So it's sort of diegetic in that regard. and a little more palatable in that sense, instead of just sort of this non-diegetic, who the hell are they talking to type sense of voiceover. That's a bit of a tangent, but you brought it up.
Now I'm gonna look that stuff up and continue.
What exactly are you gonna look up?
What's it? Diegetic? What are you talking about? What?
A diegetic is the word diegesis. It means within the world of the film, within the world of the story. So there's like generally we'll talk about music or sound as diegetic or non-diegetic. Like for example, if a character in a movie sings a song, that's diegetic. If a director plays a song over a scene, like Ride of the Valkyries, is actually diegetic. Like Robert Duvall's character plays that music as he's approaching it. So that's actually in the movie. The rest of the music and the sound design is not necessarily diegetic. It's just added, for effect, or like The Doors would be an example of non-diegetic music that opens the movie. Referring to Apocalypse Now. It is not a part. No one's playing that music within the narrative. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now this last bracket's kind of exciting. It's a 70s bracket, and it's exciting because for the first time, these two will actually determine the winner. This is not a screening that. I mean, I had two separate screenings of this movie, but not with the same groups of people. So I did screen these films twice within the year. We saw Apocalypse Now in L.A. At the cemetery, and at Bryant Park in August. We saw this other film, and they happen to go against each other in the 70s bracket. And it's Chinatown versus Apocalypse Now. I'll tell you guys right now, Chinatown, and we've talked about Chinatown before because it went up against something. What did it go up against? Recently, Philadelphia Story. Went up against Philadelphia Story.
Philadelphia Story.
In the AFI bracket, and it lost. Chinatown won. Chinatown beat the Philadelphia Story. When we talked about Chinatown at that time, I just sort of reminded you guys that Chinatown is my second favorite movie of all time. Now, because I screened in New York and LA, there was nobody that could vote. But you guys, having watched Chinatown for our discussion about the Philadelphia Story, are therefore eligible to vote. And so you guys, for the first time ever, will actually determine a winner. Do you guys have anything that you want to say about Chinatown, before we get on with the actual vote?
I just draw out the suspense?
I am drawing out this. I mean, I'm saying, do you have, any generic comments without voting about Chinatown?
Oh, I like Chinatown.
For those of you that have not seen the Philadelphia Story episode, I mean, I think we talk about it more in depth when we talk about Philadelphia Story. So that's episode 16.3 for those of you that are keeping count. J Money, do you want to remind the audience what you thought about Chinatown? Not J Money, sorry, Davie Jo.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I like Chinatown a lot, and it's a movie that I've seen a few times, but it's an important movie, and it's a fun movie for me, but I don't know, it's never.
Another film noir, interestingly enough.
It is, and I feel like it's kind of stylistic, but it's also a great story. I don't know. I'm trying to downplay it because I'm
considered the best screenplay ever.
I've heard that. I don't know. I don't want to talk too highly of it because I'm about to vote for Apocalypse Now. So
okay, well then, so much for that. So why Apocalypse Now?
Apocalypse Now is I think I don't know. The story to Apocalypse Now is definitely not as intricate or as the writing.
Well, it's also not a narrative.
Right. It's such a style movie, and it's just such a visually amazing movie that I can't deny it, and it's just so utterly visceral. It sticks with you. It'll change the way you feel for a while after you.
It sticks with you. It doesn't stick with me.
All right. That's fair, but I like it. It wins to me.
All right, so that's Davie's vote, and again, it's my second favorite movie of all time. So that's J Money, your turn.
Yes. It all comes down to this. Well, so my vote would go for Chinatown. Actually, I prefer Chinatown over Apocalypse Now in this situation.
And do you want to get into why?
You know, it's funny because we spent so much time now talking about why I like Apocalypse Now a lot. I just there's a lot of qualities to both of them that I like. Chinatown to me is it's a tighter movie. It's a slightly more, I don't want to say simple. It's a little bit more
Narrative.
Potatoes-y kind of. What's that?
Narrative.
Well, yeah, sure. There's a narrative. I don't really have any problem with not having narrative, frankly, or having a really loose narrative structure. That's not something that ever bothers me.
I know.
I just think that in general, I like them both quite a bit. Chinatown happens to edge it out because maybe I prefer the format and the style decisions, and maybe I like Jack Nicholson a lot in that performance, and maybe I like a lot of things that happen in that movie just in general. So Chinatown's going to win out in this situation. Sorry, Davie Jo.
Well, I mean, it's a tie. It's a tie right now because you guys are both voters, and it's 1-1.
This is true.
That means you vote, right? Doesn't he break the tie?
Somebody's been paying attention to their rules. Yes, I am the tiebreaker in these scenarios, and I've already mentioned that Chinatown is my second favorite movie of all time. So for as much as I am impressed with Apocalypse Now in so many ways, and most foreign countries choose Apocalypse Now as their favorite American film because it is sort of a foreign sensibility. But I think Chinatown's a perfect movie, quite frankly. Second favorite movie of all time is nothing to sneeze at, especially because I'm going to reveal my favorite movie of all time later tonight. So with my tiebreaker, Chinatown moves on in the 70s bracket, which is kind of exciting. I was a little nervous about this one. I was very expected Chinatown to lose.
Yep.
J Money made me two brackets, and I wasn't sure which one was going to come up, but two winning brackets, two graphics here. So I'll have to dispose of that other graphic immediately, the one that has so there's no confusion. So Chinatown moves on. Very exciting. 3 votes tonight, guys, and we talked about this for 53 minutes.
Excellent.
Epic.
Very good.
Epic. All right, guys. So the next classic we're going to talk about, which is going to be November 9th at, if I do my math right, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. The next classic that we're going to talk about is the only Best Picture winner ever to win, even though it only had the one nomination. It was nominated in one category, Best Picture, and it won. Only happened once in history, and that's our classic movie for discussion on November the 9th. So that's something to think about, and we'll reveal that closer to the date. But next up, our final segment of the evening, home stretch, and this is the freeform section of the evening. We call it the No Name Cinema Society Sound Off. And we got some fun stuff coming up for you in the Sound Off. These guys are going to talk about some sort of Halloween horror thing or something. Is that what I'm hearing?
There'll be some discussion there, yeah.
I mean,
by the way,
J Money's got the background working for him, got a little spooky thing. Maybe he'll put some funny hats on. Who knows? But
maybe I will.
More importantly is I'm going to reveal my top 5 Spielberg films of all time. I gave these guys some choices about what top 5 I should do, and they chose top 5 Spielberg films, and that's what I'm going to be doing on the that'll be my segment on the Sound Off, and that's coming up in about 5-6 minutes. So we will see you guys then. Tune in. Bye.
Well,
Awesome. He didn't end the broadcast.
All
All right, let's just all close out.
right. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, world.
Goodbye.